Hello and good evening, everybody. And tonight on this channel, I am going to continue my countdown for my top 50 artists of all time. And when I last left you on this series, it was quite a while ago, I had gotten up through spot 11. So I'm going to start with spot 10 and then continue on. So anyways, I'd like to also just remind everyone that my picks for the top 50 musical artists of all time, it is purely subjective. It is purely my personal opinion. I am well aware that some of the artists that I may rank pretty high, they're high because I really like them. I'm not saying that they are necessarily better than artists that I rank quite low. In fact, some very legendary artists I have ranked lower than maybe some that were not so legendary. It's all my opinion, and I highly encourage you to, state your opinion in the comments. I encourage you to post your own lists of the top 50 musical artists of all time. I highly encourage that. Just please keep it civil, and if anyone says anything that you disagree with, you're free to disagree back, but just again, we can all just act like adults here. But before I get started, I am going to recap as to where we left off last time. So let me go ahead and get this ready. And anyways, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. 50th place was Sabotage. 49th, Angel Witch. 48, Bon Jovi. 47, Foreigner. 46, Triumph. 45th, Lucifer's Friend. 44th, Manowar. 43rd, Raven. 42, Poison. 41, The Who. 40th, Sammy Hagar. 39, Ted Nugent. 38, Journey. 37, The Rolling Stones. 36, The Vinnie Vincent Invasion. 35, Motorhead. 34, Yes. 33, Diamond Head. 32, UFO. 31, Megadeth. 30th, Budgie. 29th, Uriah Heep. 28, Styx. 27, Quiet Riot. 26, Rainbow. 25, Queen. 24, Pink Floyd. 23, Def Leppard. 22, Blue Oyster Cult. 21, Aerosmith. 20th, Whitesnake. 19th, REO Speedwagon. 18th, Twisted Sister. 17, Dio. 16 was a hybrid between King Diamond and Merciful Fate. I consider them one and the same. 15th, Ozzy Osbourne. 14th, Guns N' Roses. 13th, The Scorpions. 12th, Alice Cooper. And 11th, got a little mixed up there. 11th, Motley Crue. So now I'm going to continue on with 10th place. And who I'm going to talk about next, I actually did talk about them quite recently on an episode of Album Rant. And there are many artists out there like, Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and Poison that are considered to be quote-unquote party rock bands or whatever, I guess you could say that. And I think what I'm going to get to next is who would pretty much be considered the originators of that subgenre of rock or heavy metal. And it was an artist, or it was a band that was formed by two brothers by the name of Eddie and Alex Van Halen, and that, of course, is Van Halen. And this is the initial greatest hits that I bought. And I just remember there was one time when I was on a beach trip with a friend of mine, and we listened to this thing over and over and over again. And as you can see right here on the back, it goes in chronological order, actually. And we have the David Lee Roth era first, and then comes the Sammy Hagar songs. And it's highly incomplete. I mean, we do have Eruption, Ain't Talking About Love, and Run with the Devil, which were all from the initial debut album, which is a great album. I have reviewed this before on Album Rant, and I also rank this my favorite Van Halen album of all time. But again, great songs, very hard rocking, very heavy. David Lee Roth may not quite be the most talented lead vocalist, but They wrote great music with him. Dance the Night Away was off the second album. I have also reviewed that before on Album Rant. Maybe not the best song from Van Halen 2, but still really great. Other highlights from that album were Beautiful Girls, and Somebody Get Me a Doctor, and DOA, Dead or Alive, all great. Then we have The Cradle Will Rock. That was off the Women and Children First album, which I recently just reviewed on Album Rant. Guys, that album has so much great stuff on it that is not included on here, like Everybody Wants Some, Fools, Romeo Delight, Lost Control, Lost Control, Lost Control, Lost Control, Lost Control, Lost Control. Okay, that was pretty bad. But anyways, I'm just saying that this is very, very, very incomprehensive, or not fully comprehensive. Unchained came from the Fair Warning album. Again, more great stuff from that album, such as Mean Streets and Dirty Movies and Sinner's Swing. And so this is Love. But of course, guys, the very end of that album, the kind of compilation or the merging of Sunday Afternoon in the Park and One Foot Out the Door, definite underrated classic. This does not include anything from Diver Down, which you can kind of understand because that album was mostly covers. But man, Jump and Panama, both from the 1984 album. And I've also reviewed that before on Album Rant. Also, we also had Hot for Teacher, House of Pain, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs, great songs. But a lot of people kind of say that after the 1984 album and then we went into the 5150 album, there was a change in the lineup. Sammy Hagar became their new lead vocalist. And yes, there were some songs that they wrote with Sammy Hagar that kind of had a change in direction. We had some synth pop in there, such as Why Can't This Be Love? And Dreams, and also Love Walks In. But I think there's a slight misconception that going from there to there, the band just completely changed their sound. And let's just be honest, on 1984, there was still some synth pop. Jump and I'll Wait definitely, were kind of pushing it with the synthesizers. And even then, on 5150, we still had some hard rocking numbers like the title track, and Good Enough, and Get Up, and Inside, the album closer. I love that one. When It's Love came from OU 812. That is another love ballad, and I agree that's very different from what they wrote when they had David Lee Roth as the lead vocalist, but still, there was still some great stuff from that album, such as Mine All Mine, and Cabo Wabo, and Sucker in a Three-Piece, and AFU Naturally Wired. Yes, said that correctly, I think. So yeah. The For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album came next. We had Pound Cake and Right Now, and I think that was a pretty straightforward hard rock album. Really loved it. And of course, the end of the Sammy Hagar era was the Balance album, and Can't Stop Loving You was another really kind of soft song. And yeah, Not Enough was also a piano ballad, but there was still some great stuff off the Balance album, like The Seventh Seal. I love that song. So anyways, if you've kind of written off the Sammy Hagar era as just, a bunch of poppy love ballads, yeah, they existed, but that's not all they did. So go ahead and give it another shot, and if you still don't like them, then okay, but regardless, Van Halen is one of my all-time favorite artists, and I really wish I got to see them when they had a vocalist who was not completely past his prime, but regardless, they've been a big part of my life, and I really do appreciate their existence. So yeah, Van Halen, number 10. So number 9 is actually kind of interesting. This is going to be an artist that I have talked about a lot on this channel. I have talked about many artists that rose out of the ashes of this artist. Yeah, I actually have. Like, when this band broke up, some of the members went off and formed new bands, and that, of course, is Deep Purple. And I'm going to be brutally honest. A lot of people just recognize songs like Smoke on the Water and Woman from Tokyo, and I know they're very, very iconic songs, but there's really a lot more of them than just those songs. Now, Hush and Kentucky Woman came from the Rod Evans era, and a lot of people kind of write those albums off, and Yeah, I mean, the band did get much better when Ian Gillan joined, but there was some great stuff from that era. Hush and Kentucky Woman are both covers, but they're still great. But guys, once in 1970, when Rod Evans and Nick Semper were swapped out for Ian Gillan and Roger Glover, they really did kind of crank things up a bit, and they became more of a hard rock, heavy metal, foundational band, a lot along the lines of Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and they put out some killer stuff in the early 70s, such as the In Rock album. We had Speed King and Child in Time. Child in Time is probably my all-time favorite Deep Purple song. Black Knight was a single that came from this era, but it was still great. We had the Fireball album. We had the title track, Strange Kind of Woman and Demon's Eye. Something kind of interesting about that is this. Some editions of Fireball have Strange Kind of Woman. Some editions have Demon's Eye. So it just depends on whether you buy the album in the US or the UK, but regardless, great songs. Yeah, the Machine Head album probably is their most successful. The Machine Head album being right there. Okay, see it? Yeah, got it. But yeah, we had Highway Star, which is one of the most iconic. It's one of the most iconic concert openers of all time. Smoke on the Water, yeah, that's what this band is known for. I get it. Space Truckin', very, very underrated. Man, John Lord is just killing it on the organ there, and it's so catchy and so bizarre. I just love it. Then we have Woman from Tokyo. Yep, we've all heard it. The Who Do We Think We Are album was probably the weakest album from that era, but still very good. Now, guys, the Mark III era starts there. We have Burn and Stormbringer, and the Burn album is right here, okay? I have reviewed that before on Album Rant. Guys, I'm telling you, Burn is awesome, okay? It is right up there with the classic Mark II era stuff. We had the title track, which pretty much became the unofficial concert opener after they retired, when new members came in and Ian Gillan and Roger Glover were out. We also had Might Just Take Your Life, Lay Down, Stay Down, Sail Away, The Mighty, Depressing, Mistreated. Stormbringer, guys, was, kind of a change in direction. They really started focusing their efforts more towards soul and blues and funk music. Still really great, but, not quite up to the level. Come Taste the Band came after Stormbringer, and Richie Blackmore hung it up after that one. And some people may not love the fact that, they really were leaning heavily into the funk and blues, but I still really loved it. But yeah, after the Come Taste the Band album, the band did kind of implode on itself. Everyone went off in different directions. Some people joined Rainbow, some people joined Whitesnake, even some people joined Black Sabbath. But there was a reunion back in the mid-'80s, and they've just been going strong ever since then. I really think you should check out this live album, Made in Japan. It's a classic live album. I did not love it initially, but I've really warmed up to it recently, so yeah. Deep Purple is my number 9th favorite artist of all time. So number 8 is going to come next. And this is going to be a Canadian power prog rock trio. I'm not sure if you would call them metal, probably not, but definitely prog rock. And yeah, I think the cat's pretty much out of the bag here. That is going to be the Mighty Rush right here. And I chose to highlight the Chronicles album because I think it's a fairly chronological, comprehensive compilation of their greatest hits, but I'm still really emphasizing that there is a lot more to Rush than just this compilation. Finding My Way and Working Man came from the initial self-titled album back in 1974. This was before Neil Peart joined the band and John Rutsey was their drummer. And they were a fairly straightforward hard rock band and definitely had some influences from Led Zeppelin, which made sense because Led Zeppelin was pretty much dominating the musical scene back then. But yes, the new guy joined in 1975, Neil Peart, and we had the Fly By Night album, which had Fly By Night and Anthem. Other highlights from that album were By Tour and the Snow Dog. Guys, I'm going to say this right now, Beneath, Between, and Behind. I think that song is great. I think it is so incredibly catchy, and it's one that really falls through the cracks, so check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed. Of course, we had In the End. Now, unfortunately, the Crest of Steel album, which Bastille Day and Lakeside Park were from, that one has kind of fallen through the cracks, and it was not commercially successful, and it was really overindulgent, but still, check it out. There's some great material in there. The Fountain of Lament was their first, composition or suite that was pushing the 20-minute mark. It is a little bit more sporadic than I would have liked, but it's still very, very great and very heavy. Also love the Necromancer. But folks, I did rank the Rush albums at one point, and 2112, yep, 2112 was my all-time favorite. And it's really not hard to figure out why, because the title track, which is another 20-plus minute prog rock suite, it's incredible. It is so incredibly, what's the word? It's very catchy, it's very well put together, it's got a great story behind it, and it's just a beast of a composition. Farewell to Kings came next. We had the title track and Closer to the Heart. They continued down the prog rock path, and it was also really, really momentous. Other songs or compositions from that one, we had Xanadu. I love Xanadu. We had Cinderella Man. We had Cygnus X1, which kind of bled over into their next album, Hemispheres, which featured the Trees and La Villa Strangiato. And also Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres, which was a continuation of Cygnus X1. It was also really good. And there was one more song on there, that's right, Circumstances. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. But yes, Permanent Waves came out in 1980, and it featured their two big hit radio singles, Free Will and The Spirit of Radio. I have reviewed Permanent Waves before. It was the third episode I ever did. It was back in the primitive days, and it was only about 10 minutes or so, but it's a great album. We also had Entre Nous, Jacob's Ladder, and Natural Science. Now, as the 80s came on, or proceeded, they really started to drift further and further and further into new wave, which may be a turnoff for some people, but one cannot deny that Moving Picture is a great album, okay? And yeah, let me get that in the focus right there. Yeah, Moving Picture is considered by many to be their best one. I think I disagree, but it's still really great. Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, Limelight, all big radio hits, and we're still not fully embracing the new wave yet. We're still very much in the prog rock days, but still, the steps are being made. We also had YYZ, a great instrumental. We had The Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs. However, I'm sure many will agree that there was a definite change in direction when the Signals album came out. We had Subdivisions and New World Man were on that one. We did not have these really long compositions anymore. Instead, the songs were about 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes or so. They were more straightforward, and the synthesizers were definitely starting to become apparent. I still like the Signals album very much. I ranked it 8th, actually, which is pretty good. And we also had other songs from that album that I love. There was also The Analog Kid. We had Digital Man and Countdown. I really love Countdown. Another song that's really fallen through the cracks. You need to check it out. Grace Under Pressure, I think a lot of people believe, is when they went a little too far. The synthesizers are now definitely front and center, and Alex Lifeson's guitar is being buried underneath it. Songwriting was still strong. We had Distant Early Warning, we had Red Sector A, and there was also Between the Wheels, Kid Gloves, The Enemy Within, After Image, I believe that's what it's called. So yeah, not a bad album, but definitely kind of lackluster. I think that Power Windows, it gets a little too much hate. Okay, I really do love Power. I don't love it, but I like it. And I think that a lot of people just lump it in with the rest of their 80s pop stuff, and that's fair. But I think the songwriting is pretty strong on that one. We had, of course, the Big Money and Manhattan Project, which were two of the big leads from that album. There was also Grand Designs. I love Grand Designs. Marathon. That is one of my all-time favorite Rush songs. It is so catchy and so meaningful. There was also, what else? Mystic Rhythms. We had Middletown Dreams. Emotion Detector. There's more to that album than a lot of people give it credit for, but I will admit the overproduction and the overusage of synthesizers does bring it down a bit. Hold Your Fire, however, I think does kind of struggle. I do like Time Stands Still. I do like Mission, but overall, it's not their strongest work. And from there on out, they put out a lot of albums in the 90s. I thought they were hit and miss, and from about the early 2000s to 2012, they really started amping things up. They got really, really heavy and really started moving towards heavy metal. I think the songwriting wasn't quite there, but the sound was. But regardless, guys, Rush is my 8th favorite band of all time, and I'm sure you've heard of them, and if you haven't, better get on it. So now I come to 7th place, and this is an artist that I always knew about. I bought a greatest hits in high school. I was like, yeah, it's okay. A few songs on here I like. And I kind of put it on the back burner for a while, but then I really got into them in college, like sophomore, junior year of college. I'm like, wait, I really, really love this. I saw them multiple times, I think 8 times total, which is a lot. They packed it up quite recently, a few years ago, but yeah, this is New York-based glam rock band or metal band. I'm not sure if you want to go that far, but yeah, it's the one and only Kiss. And this is the very first greatest hits that I ever bought. And you can see right here, it's rather comprehensive. Starts off with the first album. We had Strutter and Deuce from it. But guys, there is so much more of that first album than just Strutter and Deuce. There was Nothing to Lose. There was Firehouse. There was Cold Gin, 100,000 Years. Black Diamond. It was such a great album. Hotter Than Hell came next. Got to Choose, and the title track were from that. And it wasn't quite as good as the debut, but it was still really good. But other songs from that album I love. There's also Parasite. There is Watching You. There is Strange Ways. Great album. Dressed to Kill, I think, is probably the weakest from this era. But, you know, Come On and Love Me is good. Room Service is good. I like Two Timer. I like Getaway. But yes, this live album right here is one of the all-time greatest live albums ever. Everything about it works. I mean, aside from the fact that I think most of it was recorded in the studio. But essentially, this is the live album that the most popular version of Rock and Roll All Night comes from. And I think everything on that live album is improved. Alive by Kiss. Check it out. Destroyer, I ranked #1 of all time. Okay, that was my all-time favorite Kiss album. And this is one of the more theatrical and progressive albums. And yeah, there were a few compositions that were trying way too hard to be artsy, namely Beth and Great Expectations. But there was plenty of great stuff from that one, like Detroit Rock City. The album version. The remix is terrible, but the album version is really good. There was King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder, Shout It Out Loud, Sweet Pain, and Do You Love Me? Rock and Roll Over was next, and that one was a little bit more back to basics. And yeah, we had I Want You, Calling Dr. Love, which is a big radio hit, and Hard Luck Woman, which is a pretty good acoustic ballad. But there was also Making Love, Take Me, Ladies Room, Baby Driver, a pretty strong album. Love Gun was pretty much the end of the era. This is the end of the classic era. And it was the last time that we had an album that featured for the core members, Gene, Paul, Peter, and Ace, in the full capacity. Now, there were other albums that came after this where all 4 of them played on, but it wasn't every track. So this was really the last album that all 4 members played all the time on, at least as far as I can tell. We had I Stole Your Love, Christine 16, Love Gun, the title track. There was also Shock Me. There was Love for Sale. There was Tomorrow and Tonight. We had Hooligan, and a rather embarrassing cover of Then She Kissed Me, retitled from Then He Kissed Me. But overall, it was a very, very great album. But unfortunately, after that, they were hit and miss after those first 6 albums. But don't get me wrong, I did like Creatures of the Night. I love Creatures of the Night, actually. Lick It Up was great. I can tolerate Animalize. Asylum has a few good songs. I think Crazy Nights is underrated. Not great, but underrated. I do like Revenge. So yeah, these guys are incredibly iconic. They are a household name, and they are my 7th favorite artists of all time. So 6th place seems to be the next logical course of action. And it's going to go back to the new wave of British heavy metal. I have also talked about this artist quite a lot on this channel, many times throughout its history, and that is the one and only Iron Maiden. Yeah. And one thing that Iron Maiden does very well, aside from writing great music, is their artwork. Their artwork is top-notch, and pretty much every album has their rather grim mascot named Eddie featured on it in some capacity, and he's altered to fit the themes of the album. Now, this greatest hits here actually goes in reverse order, so I'm going to go in reverse order. The very first album included Phantom of the Opera, Strange World, Iron Maiden, the title track, and Sanctuary on some releases. It was a great fusion of metal and punk rock. And then we had the Killers album. Now, this only features Wrathchild, but there's also Murders in the Rue Morgue, the title track, Prodigal Son, Drifter, and I know I'm missing some stuff, Innocent Exile, Genghis Khan. And that would unfortunately be the last album with original singer Paul Di'Anno, but Number of the Beast came next, and this was a great album, okay? It's right there, actually. And I have reviewed this before on Album Rant. This was number 6, it was the number 6th episode I ever did. It was my 6th one ever. And that included, of course, the title track, Run to the Hills, Hallowed Be Thy Name, which is one of their all-time greatest hits ever. We also had songs like The Prisoner, and Children of the Damned, and Gangland, and what else? Invaders, and there's something I'm missing. I'll think of it. 22 Acacia Avenue, that's right. Peace of Mind was next. That included Where Eagles Dare and The Trooper. And Where Eagles Dare is easily the best song off of Peace of Mind. I think The Trooper is a little bit overrated, but I still like it, okay? I also like Revelations, and Die With Your Boots On, and Sun and Steel, and Still Life, and A Tame a Land. But Power Slave came next, and that included 2 Minutes to Midnight, and Aces High, which are 2 of their greatest hits ever. We also had The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and the title track was also another great composition. And something I need to point out, guys, is Live After Death. This is a live album they did for the Power Slave tour. It is also one of the greatest live albums ever, and it's a definite recommendation. Over here on the first disc, actually, I'd say the sound quality kind of dipped a bit, but there was still some good stuff on here. Somewhere in Time had Heaven Can Wait and Wasted Years. Also, Alexander the Great, Sea of Madness, and Stranger in a Strange Land. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son includes The Clairvoyant, Can I Play with Madness, and The Evil That Men Do. I do not really like Can I Play with Madness, but I do like Infinite Dreams, and I do like the title track, and I kind of like The Prophecy. I was not the biggest fan of No Prayer for the Dying. I was not the biggest fan of Fear of the Dark. However, I do love the title track, and I do love Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Be Quick or Be Dead is okay. However, in the mid-90s, Bruce Dickinson actually left the band to pursue a solo career, and he was replaced by Blaze Bayley. And Blaze Bayley, his vocal style is much closer to Paul Di'Anno than Bruce Dickinson, and I think he's a decent vocalist, but nowhere near as good as Bruce was. And the 2 albums he did with them, The X Factor and Virtual 11, they kind of struggled. I mean, there was some good stuff. Sign of the Cross is a great song. Man on the Edge is good. I did like Future Real, and I love The Klansman. But yeah, those are definitely two of the weaker albums. However, guys, in 2000, Bruce rejoined the band, and they became a six-piece. It was Bruce Dickinson, Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, Yannick Gers, Steve Harris, and Nico McBrain. And they released six really great albums. I mean, I have a few issues with them. I think some of them are a little bit too long than they need to be, but still we had Brave New World, Dance of Death, A Matter of Life and Death, The Final Frontier, Book of Souls, and their most recent composition, Senjutsu. And I did see the Senjutsu tour, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, Iron Maiden, I love these guys back in high school, and one of my all-time favorite artists, and I still love them today, and I do plan on seeing them pretty soon, actually. I'm going to see them on their Run For Your Lives tour, and I'm really excited about that. So, fifth place is next, but I'm going to cover that next time. I'm going to stop right there. And so I want to say thank you all very much for joining me tonight. Before I wrap this up, I want to go back through the countdown and recap where we've been. So, yes, gonna zoom back in here. 50th place, Sabotage. 49, Angel Witch. 48, Bon Jovi. 47, Foreigner. 46, Triumph. 45th, Lucifer's Friend. 44th, Manowar. 43rd, Raven. 42, Poison. 41, The Who. 40, Sammy Hagar. 39, Ted Nugent. 38, Journey. 37, The Rolling Stones. 36, The Vinnie Vincent Invasion. 35th, Motorhead. 34, Yes. 33, Diamond Head. 32, UFO. 31, Megadeth. 30th, Budgie. 29, Uriah Heep. 28, Styx. 27, Quiet Riot. 26, Rainbow. 25, Queen. 24, Pink Floyd. 23, Def Leppard. 22, Blue Oyster Cult. 21, Aerosmith. 20th, Whitesnake. 19, REO Speedwagon. 18, Twisted Sister. 17, Dio. 16, King Diamond and Merciful Fate. But if you want to count them as two separate artists, then go ahead, I guess. 15, Ozzy Osbourne. 14, Guns N' Roses. 13, The Scorpions. 12, Alice Cooper. 11, Motley Crue. 10, Van Halen. 9, Deep Purple. 8, Rush. 7, Kiss. 6, Iron Maiden. So I again want to say thank you all again for joining me tonight. I had a great time doing this video, and one day I will actually finish the countdown. But for now, next time, I want to talk about an album that is a real obsession for me. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.